Most people think that coaching can happen within a single session. In fact, there's coaching models that start with the question, what's on your mind? And then you go through an hour session, and at the end of that session, you've got some actions that you're going to take forward, and on you go. And that can be valuable to a point. But I find that coaching is more valuable. In fact, it's incredibly transformational when we approach it from a journey point of view. I'm Angela Cox. I'm the founder of PSdC&x, and I've been coaching people full-time now for the last 8 years. I've done more than 8,000 coaching hours, and through that I've figured out the journey that if you take a client through it, they will come through not only as their real and authentic self, but with life-changing outcomes. So today in this video, I'm going to share with you the steps of the coaching journey as I see them, and share with you the elements that we teach at PSdC&x. So I've got my whiteboard. Let's give it a go. The coaching journey as I see it actually starts in a place where most traditional coaching styles don't. I start with what I like to call stop being stuck. And this is about going back in time with a client and understanding all of the things that have happened to them along the way that are contributing to how they show up now. Now, in Stop Being Stuck, there are a number of stages that we go through. And the first one starts with what I call the synopsis. And the synopsis is an overview of the client's life. I call it the good, the bad, and the ugly on a single page. And I'll ask the client to write that down before they even step into the coaching room. Now, the idea of the synopsis inquiry is it gives me information about how that client shows up. Quite often on that page of writing, which is usually 2 pages, I'll be honest, you will see the client's inside job. You'll see their inner voices, the inner critic. You'll experience some of their beliefs in the way that they write, where they're stuck and where they're flourishing. And you'll also get an insight into the things that they believe have been the good things, the bad things, and the ugly things as part of their life. Now, when we're coaching clients in this way, there needs to be boundaries, and the synopsis inquiry helps you understand whether the client has had chronic trauma in their past, or, things that are outside of our remit as coaches, and you can use that as an information input, but obviously you wouldn't do the work there. But it also gives you lots of guidance as to things that are holding the client back now from a behavioural point of view that you can do some work on. When we're working with the synopsis as a coach, what we're looking to do is establish what we believe is the hypothesis in terms of the things that we can work on with this client to help them move forward. So that might be a belief switch. It might be breaking a pattern that is repeating through their life. It might be increasing self-value or working with their self-trust. It might be taking off a pretender mask. There are lots of different elements that come through on that single page. Now, once we've read that and we've prepared for the session, the next step is to meet our client in person or online, and we'll do that for ideally a half-day session. Certainly if it's in person, half day works well here. If it's on a Zoom or a Teams call, maybe 2 sessions of 90 minutes would be better. But what we're aiming to do during that time is the next step of this Stop Being Stuck process, which I call the synopsis inquiry. And what this is our meeting of the client, where they're at, and discussing what came up for them when they were writing the synopsis. Often clients say that for them, it's been like a therapeutic exercise. They'll use words like cathartic, or they'll say, I wrote something in that synopsis that I've never told anybody before. And what you're doing in a co-creative way, I'm okay, you're okay, with that client that's in front of you, is starting to discuss some of the elements that are in the synopsis. What shows up for them? What did it mean when they were writing it? What really stood out? What would they like to work on? But then importantly, as the coach, you also share your thoughts on the synopsis and what stood out for you. And together you decide as a co-creative partnership what things you will be working on as part of Stop Being Stuck. And it's often things that are in the past. So we have two key tools that we use at this stage. And the first one is called Havening for Coaches. Now, Havening for Coaches was developed by Dr. Rudin and I, and Dr. Rudin was the co-creator with his twin brother of Havening Techniques, which is a therapeutic modality which helps people to disarm traumatic moments in their history. Now, I first trained in that and brought it into the coaching room for high performers who had challenges in their behavior that they wanted to move away from. And what I realized was, rather than work with people who are in a mental health crisis or need access to mental health provision, which Havening was originally designed for in a clinical sense, I started to implement it into coaching and used it to decouple the connection between a 7-year-old moment that happened, say, at school with a teacher, and how you're showing up now in the boardroom as a director in an organization. And so I started to bring this into the Stop Being Stuck arena, and clients started to tell me that they felt different. They were having life-changing transformations within that half-day session that were making them be able to go back into the workplace and not only feel different, but act differently as well. And so I went to Dr. Rudin in New York and talked to him about the findings that I was having in the coaching room, and asked whether PSdC could co-create with him a version of Havening that was fit for people who didn't need access to mental health provision, a version that we could bring into coaching rather than into therapy. And Havening for Coaches became part of the Stop Being Stuck journey. Now, that works really well if in the synopsis inquiry, or the client letting us know about memories that are already at the forefront of mind. So you usually know as an individual a handful of things that have happened to you in the past that you might constitute as bad or ugly. And it works if we know what the memory is. But sometimes the client doesn't have an idea as what memory in the past is driving their behavior now. And often it's not even in their conscious memory. So we need a way of bringing to the surface those memories that are hidden. And the way that we do that in the Stop Being Stuck phase is using something called limitless light. Now, limitless light has been developed by me. It's a way that we can access a memory from the past that is driving behavior today. So let me give you an example. We might have a client come to us and say, I don't feel like I've got any confidence. I've got this big job. I'm showing up all of the time and I feel like I'm faking it. And often they'll talk about imposter syndrome feelings. And I'm in a situation where I'm getting feedback all the time that I am not assertive enough. And so we will take a moment from the last 6 months when they felt like that, and we'll have a look at that subconsciously, and we'll ask the client to think about what feelings were coming up for them when that was happening. And there's usually a visceral feeling within the midsection of the body. So it might be horrible feeling in the stomach, horrible feeling of warmth that's coming over their head. They'll describe it in different ways. And we use that feeling to be able to track back to a moment in history that they have no conscious awareness of, but comes to them through this process. And we might end up where they're 5 years old and they're arguing with a sibling and the sibling is overpowering them, so they shrink back And they decide in that moment that it's better for them at times of conflict to stay quiet. And what happens then is that unhelpful perspective starts to drive their behavior as they move through life. And that's what's happening in the boardroom. So what we do is we go in and we work with that little version of them. We coach that version of them to change the perspective, because the perspective is often created from a place of little resource. Whereas if we can help resource that child and give them an adult perspective, then they can change the way that they think about it. And what happens with Limitless Light when we do this work is the client leaves the coaching session and they go back into the workplace and they enter what I call push me, pull me. They might decide that they are in that situation and they would normally behave like this, but they don't feel compelled to behave like that anymore. They're not quite sure how they should behave instead yet, and we need to coach around that. But there's a definite feeling that how they show up normally isn't how they want to show up today. So Limitless Light is very transformational and allows us to access memories that aren't necessarily ones that the client are consciously aware of. So we've gone through the good, the bad and the ugly life story. We've gone through then discussing that with the client and getting their view and sharing ours. We've done some havening for coaches to take the charge pins out of those traumatic moments that cause fight, flight, freeze response. We've found memories that are driving behavior today and change the perspectives of them. And then at this point then, we ask the client to go away from the session and to do some what I call in-between tasks, because nobody likes the word homework, do they? So we don't call it homework, we call it in-between tasks. And what this involves is two things. The first thing is to do some work around their self-value. Now, self-value, you might call it self-worth. It's about really setting a baseline as to how they feel about themselves. And we have a specific task that we do here called the self-value baseline that allows the client to measure how high or low their self-value is right now. Because if self-value is low, you can guarantee that you will be showing up with a pretender mask on. And there's lots of other videos that you can learn about the pretender masks. And the more that we can work on self-value and increase that, the more likely it is you're able to show up as your authentic self. So as part of this work, when we're getting unstuck, we're wanting also to build up resilience and self-value. So we do the self-value baseline, and that's a piece of work that is done in between. And we also do what I call self-havening. And self-havening is a version of the havening that we've already done with the client that they can practice on a daily basis. And it's proven to build resilience in the landscape of the brain. And what that means is, as the client goes about their daily activities, they are less likely to react to situations that are happening if they are practicing havening on a daily basis. It is proven to build up resiliency, and therefore you are much less likely to react in situations. You get a moment to breathe and then choose your response. So we teach clients how to do that so that they can be less needing of your time and energy moving forward. They can become self-sufficient. Now, after we've done that, the client comes back to us and we have what's known as the follow-up. The follow-up session is not a coaching session. The follow-up session at this point is about reviewing everything that's happened so far. So what came up for the client after they left this Stop Being Stuck session? What has surfaced since? Because sometimes more memories come to the fore. What did they discover from the self-value baseline exercise and the self-havening exercise? And then what are we going to do as our onward step? So this follow-up session is usually about an hour long, and it's about looking at where we've been and then thinking about where we're going next. And some clients at that point say, I'm great now, I'm going to go off on my own. I don't feel like I need any more work. And then other clients say, I love that so much. There's actually more that I want to work on. And you might go through this cycle again, and do some more of the stop being stuck work. Or your client actually might be ready at that point to move on to stage 2, if this is stage 1, which is about finding the real you. And this stage, I feel, is really important because it really gets under the skin of who you are underneath all of the performance and all of the survival techniques that you've been using to keep yourself safe, not only at work, but at home as well. So from a whole human perspective, if you are not doing all of the things that you've had to do in order to show up, fit in, and survive, who are you? And most people don't know that. So the Find the Real You phase is all about exploring things like your self-trust, and where you erode that, and where you maintain it, and do you even know what it is? So I'll often ask clients what their boundaries are, and they're not able to tell me because they've never thought about it before. But they do know when they're being trodden on or eroded by others. So often through stories, you're able to establish levels of self-trust. We continue to work on the self-value that we started in those in-between tasks. We start looking at the pretender masks, and during that phase we're looking at examples of where the pretender mask shows up. There are 4 different masks: the perfectionist, the people pleaser, the persecutor of others, and the persecutor of self. And what we often find is in different relational activity, clients will wear different masks. So they might have a mask that they wear with their partner at home, and then a different mask that shows up with their boss at work, a different one that shows up with their team. And it's really important that we start to understand which masks are being worn when and why, and how we can start to take those off. So we do a lot of work there. We do a lot of work to understand identity. So who am I underneath the mask? We do a lot of work to understand how the client sees the world. So we look at things like beliefs, which we've started to look at Stop Being Stuck, but we go into a lot more detail. And also at this point, values. Now, if you're a traditional coach, you might be saying, well, we start with values, don't we? Usually in session 1 or 2 with traditional coaching, that's where you would start. But for me, there is absolutely no point doing values with a client until we have got the pretender mask off. Because what we find is the values are actually belonging to other people. Usually your parents or, things that you've decided that you should be along the way. And I prefer working with clients and establishing their values when we are closer to the real version of them. From this position, which might take several sessions to start to get underneath this, we then do stage 3. And stage 3 is about creating the life that you love. So what this phase is all about is working with the client to understand what they actually want from their life and all aspects of life. So, their work, their home, their family, their creativity, their relationships with others, their freedom, their money, all of it. Now, in traditional coaching, we would normally start there, wouldn't we? Same way that we start with values. It's what do you want and how do we help you move towards it? But what I've learned is when clients come to me and say they want something, and then we go and we start with Stop Being Stuck, by the time we get to Find the Real You, what they actually want in terms of the real version of them is not what they came for in the first place. And I have so many examples of this, hundreds of examples, which I know means that this journey is the right thing to getting the client to a place that actually serves them and not the version of them that they believe they should be. So creating the life that you love is a deep dive. I've got a whole framework that I take people through. that helps them set their life strategy, the goals that sit underneath that, the tactical steps that they're going to take to make that happen, the affirmational thinking that supports it, the whole thing. And then they are supported on the journey towards that so that they can make it happen. Now, from that position, the final step on the journey, step 4, is about flourishing. And this is about positive psychology. And the reason that I apply it in stage 4 positive psychology is I believe that there needs to be a level of stability, a level of resilience, a level of well-being before we apply positive psychology so that it doesn't become toxic positivity, which is just so easy to fall into. So this is about real flourishing, real ability to bounce forward from setbacks, which of course are going to happen on the journey to creating the life that you love and living that life. And really arming the client with tools, techniques, know-how, ability to be able to manage themselves through life, keep levels of resilience, be really well, feel happy, but also when things do come along in the way that life throws things at us, they have the ability to be able to manage through that and bounce forward. Now that's the journey, 4 stages. Within this, there are so many elements that are tailored to clients. So, for example, during this sort of phase here, I might be bringing in something like the trust equation, Charles Green's trust equation, to help people how trustworthiness is impacting their relationships. We might do a lot of work in Find the Real You if the client is a leader around things like situational leadership and how they show up in their leadership position. So there are lots of different tools and techniques that sit around here, as well as my own experience as being a leader and a mum and all the different roles I play. And together we co-create this journey. We tailor it to the client, and at every stage of the journey, they are peeling back layers that feel transformational and life-changing for them. And for me, this adds so much more value than just saying to a client every time they come to session, what's on your mind today? Let's work through that using the GROW model. And then you can leave with a set of actions that they probably never get round to because they're always too busy. So this is what we teach at PSdC. Stop Being Stuck is taught on our Advanced Practitioner in Transformational Coaching. We then cover Find the Real You and Create the Life You Love on our Master Practitioner in Transformational Coaching. We have an Advanced Practitioner in Positive Psychology Coaching for the Flourish stage, and you can come along and learn this whole way of working with your clients with us in our gorgeous community of what we call Team Green practitioners. And if you want to hear more about PSdC, then come along to one of our Ask Angela calls with me, or you might even do our Future Fit quiz, which we've got available, which will allow you, after a few minutes of inputting answers to your questions, we will allow you to understand where you are in your coaching journey and how you might better help your clients. So I hope this has been useful for you. It's been great for me to be able to share it with you. First whiteboard video for us as well. And thank you for spending time with me today. I hope to see you again soon.